Disclaimer: this story is a fictional dramatization meant purely for emotional and awareness-driven storytelling. It does not promote or endorse inappropriate behavior, infidelity, or abuse in any form. All characters and events are fictional, and any resemblance to real people or situations is purely coincidental. The story is designed for mature audiences and aims to spark conversations about boundaries, silence, and the courage it takes to speak up. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The house didn't feel like home anymore, not after Mom started her night shifts at the hospital. At first, it seemed like a temporary change. Something to adjust to. She had always been the heartbeat of the house, her laughter, her questions, her presence. But now the nights were too quiet. Almost haunting. And Dad? He was different. I was 19, juggling college classes online and taking care of daily chores. Staying home wasn't new, but the silence was. Dad barely talked to me when Mom was around. But now he lingered. His eyes seemed to follow me more often. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, maybe overthinking due to stress. But no. Something in his behavior shifted. There was a warmth that didn't feel paternal. A closeness that wasn't comforting. One evening, while Mom rushed out the door in her scrubs, she kissed me goodbye and told Dad, "Take care of her. It's a long night ahead." He nodded with a smile. But as the door clicked shut, I felt something shift in the air. I remember sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the strange silence. That's when he walked in with 2 cups of tea. "Movie night?" he asked. I was startled. We hadn't had a movie night since I was a child. "Sure," I said, unsure. Maybe he was just trying to bond. Maybe this was a good thing. I wanted it to be. We chose a romantic comedy, one of those light-hearted ones that made you forget the world outside. He sat on the other end of the couch at first. But as the movie played, I noticed his slow shift. Inch by inch, he moved closer. I kept telling myself it was innocent, that I was overthinking. Then came the compliment. "You look just like your mother did when she was younger." It didn't sound like admiration, it sounded wistful, deep, too personal. My heart thudded, but I brushed it off with a fake laugh. After the movie, he stayed sitting while I cleaned up. "You're becoming such a woman," he said as I passed by. That stopped me. I turned slightly, but didn't respond. What did that even mean? Later, lying in bed, I replayed the evening over and over. Maybe I was imagining it all. Maybe it was just awkward father-daughter time, made worse by Mom's absence. But a voice inside me whispered, "Stay alert." I didn't know then what was coming next. I didn't know that this was just the beginning. The next night, things got even more confusing. Mom was pulling double shifts that week, and her absence had left a strange void in the house. I tried to fill the silence with music, study, or calls with friends, but nothing masked the growing tension I felt around Dad. After dinner, he approached me again. "Another movie night," he said with a half smile. I hesitated, pretending to check my phone. Okay, sure," I replied quietly. I told myself maybe I was being cold. Maybe he just wanted company. Maybe last night was a fluke. We picked another film, this one more dramatic than funny. As the room dimmed and the movie played, I felt myself tense up. He sat beside me this time. Not too close, but closer than usual. I tucked my feet under myself and focused on the screen, trying not to think about his presence. About halfway through the film, there was a romantic scene. Nothing graphic, just emotional, intense. The kind of scene where silence fills the room. And that's when it happened. He reached over and placed his hand on my knee. It was slow, gentle, but it didn't feel right. It wasn't casual. It wasn't the kind of touch that said comfort or support. It felt invasive. I froze. I stared straight at the screen, not moving a muscle. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe. But the way his thumb lightly brushed my skin said otherwise. I gently shifted my leg away, pretending to adjust my position. His hand slid off, and he didn't say a word. Neither did I. The rest of the movie passed in complete silence between us. When the credits rolled, I stood up abruptly and stretched. "I'm heading to bed. Early class tomorrow," I said. My voice was shaky, but I hoped he didn't notice. "All right," he replied, his tone unreadable. I locked my bedroom door that night for the first time ever. Under the covers, my mind raced. I kept replaying that moment, trying to rationalize it, trying to convince myself it wasn't what it felt like. But deep down, I knew. Fathers don't touch their daughters like that, not in that way. Not with that silence. Not with that stare. I wanted to talk to someone. To tell Mom. To text a friend. But I didn't even know how to put it into words. Nothing technically happened, right? But something did. Something unspoken. And it was only getting harder to ignore. I lay awake for hours, the weight of that moment pressing down on me like a stone. And for the first time, I didn't feel safe in my own home. The next few days, I tried to stay busy, burying myself in lectures, dishes, laundry, anything to avoid being in the same room as Dad. But it wasn't enough. The house felt smaller. The air felt heavier. And he felt like a stranger living under the same roof. It wasn't just the touch on my knee anymore. It was the way he looked at me. His gaze had changed. Before, it was just casual glances, a nod when I passed by, a neutral look during meals. But now, his eyes lingered. He studied me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Like he was searching for something in my face or body. One morning, I walked into the kitchen wearing a loose t-shirt and leggings, something I wore around the house all the time. He was sipping coffee at the table, scrolling through his phone. But when I reached for a glass, I caught him staring in the reflection of the microwave door. Not just staring, examining. I pulled my shirt down instinctively. "Good morning," I mumbled, trying to keep my tone casual. "Morning," he replied, his eyes still on me. "You look more and more like your mother every day." The words hit me wrong. Again. I gave a half-hearted smile and walked away, avoiding eye contact. That line had become his favorite. But every time he said it, it felt less like a compliment and more like a warning. From that day, I began changing my clothes in the bathroom instead of my room. I avoided walking around in pajamas. I even started skipping dinner when Mom wasn't home. But none of it changed the way he looked at me. He started making odd remarks. "You've really matured this year," or "You carry yourself so gracefully now." At first glance, they might have sounded fatherly. But in context, in his voice, they were anything but. I started doubting myself. Was I overreacting? Was this just how dads talk when their daughters grow up? But deep inside, something screamed no. This wasn't normal. This wasn't safe. And I didn't know how to tell anyone. One evening, I overheard a phone call between him and Mom. She was exhausted, telling him she might pick up extra shifts to cover some unexpected bills. "At least you two are spending more time together," she said, her voice full of trust. He chuckled softly. "Yeah, it's been nice." I stood frozen outside the hallway, a knot forming in my stomach. His tone made my skin crawl. She had no idea. She trusted him blindly. And I was too scared to break that trust. The walls of the house were closing in on me. I wasn't a little girl anymore, but I felt smaller than ever. Alone. Confused. Powerless. And I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. That night was a turning point. I had spent the entire day glued to my laptop, finishing a long assignment. By the time I shut the screen, my back ached and my head throbbed. Mom had texted earlier, saying she'd be on an emergency overnight shift. I replied with a half-hearted "be safe," then tossed my phone aside. I didn't even make it to my bed. I collapsed on the living room couch, too exhausted to climb the stairs. The soft flicker of the TV in the background lulled me to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, I stirred. I didn't open my eyes fully, just that hazy, half-awake state. I felt something soft being draped over me. A blanket. At first, it felt comforting. Then I realized the hand lingered. His hand. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I forced myself to stay still, pretending to sleep as my heart pounded inside my chest. His fingers grazed my arm, slow and deliberate, before trailing down my side. Then lower. I felt everything. Not a word was spoken. No sound in the room except the quiet hum of the television. He must have thought I was completely asleep, or maybe he didn't care. I wanted to scream. I wanted to get up and run. But my body betrayed me. I was frozen, trapped in fear. If I moved, what would he do? Would he get angry? Would he deny it? Would he make it worse? And then, as quickly as it began, he stopped. I heard him shift away, then the soft creak of the stairs as he walked back to his bedroom. I lay there, still pretending to sleep, paralyzed by shock. My hands were clenched under the blanket, nails digging into my palms. Tears began to roll silently down my face. I stayed on the couch the entire night. Not because I was tired, but because I couldn't move. I was afraid of seeing him again. Afraid of what I'd have to face if I looked him in the eyes. When morning came, the sunlight pouring through the window felt cruel. Like it was exposing me. Like it saw everything I didn't want to admit. He walked into the room like nothing happened. Casual. Smiling. "You fell asleep here," he said cheerfully. "You should have gone upstairs." I couldn't speak. My voice was buried somewhere deep inside my chest. I just nodded. "You want breakfast?" he asked. I shook my head and rushed to the bathroom. I locked the door and slid to the floor, my whole body shaking. Something had changed that night. It wasn't just a line being crossed. It was the moment I realized this wasn't confusion or misunderstanding anymore. This was wrong. And I wasn't imagining it. It was a Sunday morning. Mom had been called to a medical conference for the weekend, an out-of-town event. She kissed my forehead before leaving, unaware of the dread swirling in my chest. I wanted to beg her to stay. I wanted to tell her everything. But like always, I smiled and said, "Have a good trip." As soon as the door shut behind her, the silence returned. The kind of silence that no music or television could fill. The kind that made every footstep echo too loud. I stayed in my room most of the day. Studying. Pretending. Surviving. By noon, my stomach grumbled. I hadn't eaten all morning. I thought I'd sneak down, grab something quick, and get back upstairs before Dad noticed. But I was wrong. He was already in the kitchen when I got there. He looked too relaxed, leaning against the counter in a t-shirt and sweatpants, coffee in hand. "Hey," he said, smiling as I walked in. "Didn't think you'd come out of hiding." I forced a tight smile and went straight to the fridge. "I was thinking," he continued, his voice casual but unsettling, "we should do something together today. Just you and me. Like old times." "I have homework," I muttered, not turning around. He moved closer. I could feel him behind me before I even heard his steps. My body stiffened as I poured milk into a bowl of cereal. He reached past me, allegedly to grab a spoon from the drawer, but his hand brushed my waist. "Sorry," he said too slowly. Too deliberately. I stepped aside, pretending not to notice. But then, as I turned to leave with my bowl, he stood in my path. "Why are you avoiding me?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. Did I do something wrong? I blinked. My throat went dry. I shook my head, trying to move past him. He didn't let me. He stepped closer. "You've really grown up," he whispered, eyes drifting lower than they should. "You carry yourself like a woman now." My hands tightened around the bowl. I could feel my heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't respond. I just stared down at the floor, hoping it would swallow me whole. He reached out, fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. That was it. I jerked back, nearly dropping the bowl. "Don't," I said, my voice trembling. "Don't touch me." For a second, he looked stunned. Embarrassed, maybe. Or caught. Then came the smile, the one that chilled me. "I didn't mean anything," he said smoothly. "You're just so sensitive." I ran upstairs without another word, slammed my door shut, and locked it. The bowl sat untouched on my desk. My appetite was gone. He had cornered me. Played it off. Made it seem like I was overreacting. But I wasn't. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to admit it, even if only to myself. I couldn't take it anymore. The pressure in my chest was building, day after day, like a balloon stretched too thin, ready to burst. My hands shook constantly. I barely slept. Every creak in the hallway made me flinch. I couldn't live like that. Not with the lies, the fear, the silence. So I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I didn't tell him. I didn't leave a note. I just waited until he was in the shower, grabbed my backpack, and walked straight out the door. My legs carried me faster than my mind could catch up. I went to my best friend's house, Maya. She'd known me since we were 10. We hadn't talked much recently, but I didn't care. I just needed someone. When she opened the door and saw my tear-streaked face, her smile dropped. "What happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. At first, I didn't say anything. I just sat on her bed, holding myself, knees tucked to my chest. She sat quietly, giving me space. Then, the words tumbled out. Everything. The movie nights. The touches. The whispers. The look in his eyes. The kitchen. The fear. The guilt. And most of all, the silence that was choking me. Maya didn't interrupt. Her face shifted from confusion to horror to quiet, trembling rage. When I finally finished, I expected her to ask if I was sure, or say something that would make me second-guess myself again. But she didn't. Instead, she grabbed my hand and said, "You have to tell your mom. Right now." I shook my head, panic rising. What if she doesn't believe me? What if she thinks I ruined everything? What if he denies it and makes it sound like I made it up? Maya held my gaze. "Then I'll stand with you. But you can't keep living like this. You shouldn't have to." Her words gave me courage I didn't know I had. With trembling fingers, I called Mom. She answered quickly, cheerful at first. "Hey, sweetie. Everything okay?" I paused, my mouth dry. Then, with Maya at my side, I said the words I'd been too afraid to say for weeks. "Mom, I need to tell you something. About Dad." The silence on the other end was deafening. I told her everything. Not just the recent days, but all of it. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. I let it all out. Every moment. Every look. Every touch. When I finished, the line was still quiet. Then I heard it, a sob. She was crying. Then came the words I didn't expect. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I believe you." My breath caught in my throat. She believed me. "I'm coming home," she said. "Right now." For the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of relief break through the darkness. I had spoken. I had broken the silence. And I wasn't alone anymore. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Mom came home that same night. She didn't say much when she walked through the door, just opened her arms and held me. I broke down all over again in her arms, sobbing into her shoulder, clutching her like a lifeline. For once, I didn't care about being strong. I just needed my mother. She looked different after that call. Not just tired, but shattered. The kind of broken you can't hide behind polite smiles or work uniforms. She had loved him, trusted him, built a life with him. And he had betrayed that trust in the most unthinkable way. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She quietly packed a suitcase. One for herself. One for me. When Dad came home, we were already waiting in the living room. He paused in the doorway when he saw our bags. Mom stood up and faced him. "I know what you did," she said, her voice cold but steady. She told me everything. His expression twisted into something I'll never forget. Confusion. Panic. Then denial. "What are you talking about? She's making this up." "I believe her," Mom snapped, cutting him off. "And I will never forgive you for what you did." He looked at me then, eyes full of fake innocence. "Sweetheart, you know I don't," I said. My voice was quiet but firm. "Don't call me that." That was the last time I saw him. Mom and I left that night. We moved in with my aunt temporarily while she filed for divorce. She got a lawyer. I started therapy. The legal process was slow and painful, but necessary. She stood by me the entire time. Some relatives didn't believe us. They said we were ruining a good man's name, that we were tearing the family apart. But I didn't care anymore. Because for the first time, I had chosen myself. I had chosen truth. I had chosen to live. The healing wasn't instant. Some nights, I still woke up in a cold sweat. Loud footsteps still made me flinch. But therapy helped. Talking helped. Writing helped. Time helped. And so did Mom. One day, she turned to me while we were sitting on the porch and said, "You saved both of us, you know." I was living in a lie, and I never saw it. I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like a girl who was tired of being afraid. Today, I speak my story not out of shame, but out of strength. Because I know there are others like me. Girls who feel trapped in silence. Who think no one will believe them. To them, I say, You are not alone. You are not imagining it. And your voice matters. Because the moment I spoke up, everything changed. Not all endings are happy. But this one was free. 88.